The room that at the top there, in the roof, the one with the open window, that was my room when I was a student, and I gave that room to Lyra in the story. And you can actually get out of that window, and there's a little gutter behind the parapet in front of it. You can walk along, or crawl along, and get in the windows for the other staircase. So we used to do that quite a lot. And in the film we see a shot of Lyra between the chimneys up there, sort of walking along like this, balancing on the roof, with Roger, her friend, and they sit on the roof and she spits a plumstone out and hits a scholar on the head in the quad.
Tell us, how did the film first come around? When did they first approach you, and what were your thoughts about making a movie?
Well, the first approach was quite a long time ago. The book was published in 1995, and I think the first approach I had from someone with the thought of making it into a film was not long after that, so it's over 10 years ago. But that was when the first book was published, and of course there are 2 other books in the trilogy, so they had to wait until all 3 books were out before they knew what the size of the story was.
Mm. And did you have any worries about making it into a movie, or did you think if it was done right it would be an incredibly positive thing?
Well, it's going to be a different experience, isn't it? We know that films are different from books. We know they have to leave a lot of things out, and we know that they do some things differently. But I wasn't too worried about that, because I knew that the story had already been told, for example, on the stage of the National Theatre. It had already been a radio dramatisation. It had already been an audiobook. So it had been in all these different forms already. And I thought if the story had survived those adaptations, it would probably survive a film as well.
With the open auditions, what was your involvement? Did you see Dakota's audition early? What did you think?
I didn't want to go along and look at the auditions. I was very curious and I would have liked to, but I thought it would have been unfair to put that pressure on the girls who were auditioning, so I didn't do that. But I did see the DVD they sent me with the 40 or 50 or so of the girls that they'd picked out, and they were all good. They were all so good it was very hard to choose, except that one of them was Lyra, and there was no doubt about it. That was Dakota. So from the moment we saw her, all of us, everybody involved, so she's the one, we'll have her, and we did. I was very lucky.
I mean, so what did she have? Because, you know, people who've read the books all have their image of what Lyra's like in their own mind. You, as the author, probably have a very specific, you know, and very strong view of what she's like. What did she have that made you convinced?
She looked right, that was one thing. She sounded right. And she's got a very good voice. And the interesting thing about her voice is that without sounding in the least bit posh, she manages to make every word clear. You can hear exactly what she's saying. That was a big quality. But the main thing was she had a sort of feral quality, a sort of wild quality about her, which was exactly what I thought Lyra should have. And everybody else saw that as well. So there was no doubt in anybody's mind, no arguing about it. She was the one.
And with the film overall, people have talked about the fact that, you know, it finishes at a different kind of point. Was that something you had a viewpoint on, or did you think the story worked just as well with what they did with it?
The story works very well in the way they've done it. The reason they did it was because the last 3 chapters in the book, which they filmed originally, and they were going to end the film like that, it's a difficult thing to tell in the story because it's very crowded. There's a lot of action and a lot of things that don't seem to make sense. And although it was faithful to what the book does, it didn't really work on film. And they made a very good choice, I think, a very good idea, to stop the film where they do, at a point where everybody can understand what's happening. The story is perfectly clear, and it's going to go on, and Lyra's there, and it makes a lot of sense. So I was very happy they ended the film like this. I think it'll be much better to start the next film with the bit that was cut out of this.
And tell me, when did you first see the film, and what was it like seeing your vision up there on the screen for the first time in its entirety?
I first saw the finished version of the film about 3 weeks ago, and I was thrilled because it looked marvellous. It looked so beautiful. The scenes in the Arctic, the location shots all around, just wonderful, and the performances are terrific. I'd seen bits of it at various stages in the filming, but of course before the special effects come in, instead of seeing 2 magnificent bears fighting, you just see 2 sort of grey cardboard boxes slamming together, and that doesn't look quite so good. But the special effects are the best I've ever seen in any film at all. It's just a miracle of filmmaking, really.
And were you happy with the demons? The demons are so crucial to the film and their interaction with the humans. What did you think of the way that, you know, A, they looked, and B, the way they interacted with their human counterparts?
It takes a bit of time before you get used to the demons, and the idea that animals are speaking, and the sense of how close the link is between them and their human. It's rather harder to bring that across in a film, I think, than it is in a book, when I can explain things. But they do it very well, and we see the closeness of the bond between Lyra and Pantalaimon, her demon, I think, from very early on.
And when do you think a decision might be made on whether there'll be a second and third? And do you want there to be a second and third movie?
Oh, I certainly do. I want them to tell the whole story, because we've only seen the beginning of it now. The story is much longer than this and much more involved. And part of the story is what happens to Mrs. Coulter. This woman that we see in the first film as being so evil and manipulative and vicious, well, she undergoes an enormous change in the course of the story, and that's important that we should see that. So I very much hope there will be a second and a third film. And they'll make a decision fairly soon, I think, depending on the audience reaction to the first one.
Now, in this film, casting Lyra was incredibly crucial, getting the right girl for that. If there's a film with The Subtle Knife, it'll be the same with casting Will. I mean, what do you think they need to look for in a potential Will for the next movie?
Strength. They need a young boy who is strong and determined and a little bit introverted, a little bit withdrawn, because he's had to remain secret. He's had to keep his life, a lot of his life, hidden away. He's looking after his mother, who isn't ill, who isn't very well, and he's afraid that if he lets on, if he asks for help, he'll be so separated and split up from her, and he'll have to go into a home or something. So he's used to keeping secrets. He's a very strong character, and he's used to keeping secrets. So a boy who can play those the rather difficult characteristics is what we'll need for Will.
Do you think it'll be harder or easier finding a Will than it was finding the right Lyra?
I don't know, but one thing I do know is that Will and Lyra are not special children. They're ordinary children. There are lots of Lyras. There are lots of children like Will who look after a parent without anyone knowing about it. They get up in the morning, they make breakfast for their parent, their mother or their sick father, whoever it is. They go to school, they bring their homework home, they don't tell anyone. They make supper, they clean up, they wash and dress their... they're living lives of quiet heroism, some children. So it's not an unusual thing. He's not an unusual boy. Lyra's not an unusual child. They're ordinary children in extraordinary circumstances. That's what makes them so interesting for me, anyway, as a writer.
And what else do you think will be the big challenges of The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass up on the big screen? Because the story gets so complicated.
Yes, and the challenge will be to keep it simple. To tell the simple outline of the story as clearly as possible. But that's the challenge every storyteller has to face in whatever medium we're working.
How did you feel about them calling the film The Golden Compass even here in the UK, where, children know it as Northern Lights?
Well, I was a bit reluctant to give up the title that's been the title in this country. But you see, not only in the United States, but in most countries of the world where it's been translated, it's called The Golden Compass. It's The Golden Compass in Finland, in Germany, in Italy, in Brazil. So that's what they know the story as in all these countries where the film is going to be shown. So I suppose it made sense to call it The Golden